want to turn to Singapore next. This story caught my eye as I was watching BBC World News. The Singapore government, they're paying for people to go on dates. Would you do it? BBC reporter Katie Silver, just back from Singapore, sitting down now at our desk here in the middle of the newsroom for OS. Okay, why is the government of Singapore paying people to go out and have fun?
Well, they're subsidising dating events, so things like speed dating. So I went along to a speed dating that was subsidised by the Singaporean government. And it's
Any luck?
Someone I spoke to did have a try, no. But, no, not for me, sadly. But no, the reason they're doing this, it sounds funny and fun, but there is a bit more of a serious issue here. The problem is Singapore is among one of the countries with the lowest birth rate in the world. So for every couple, they're having 1.16 kids. You need to be having 2.1 for a population to replace itself. So it's a really big problem because the country has one of the highest life expectancies in the world, yet they're not having enough babies in order to be able to fund the lifestyle and the retirement of these elderly people.
So they're trying to get people coupled up, have kids, raise that rate. Why aren't people having kids? Do we know?
One of the major reasons is because they're basically, young people are working really, really long hours, super competitive, hyper-competitive culture, and they're just not coupling up. So I spoke to Jean Young. She's a demographer at the National University of Singapore. She told me the main reason people aren't doing it, is because they're not getting together, they're not dating, that sort of a thing.
In Singapore, you have about 17 to 18% of young people never married. So that's one of the highest probably in the world in terms of singleness rate. So you really need to think about why people are not getting married.
So you need to think about why people aren't getting married. Does something like this work?
Well, it might help them sort of establish connections. That's the hope. But even if they do end up in couples, the problem is they're not generally then going on to have children. So Singaporean women have one of the highest education levels in the world, and they have a huge opportunity cost in having kids. So they've had great levels of education. They find themselves at 25 and they want to work on their career, so they don't want to necessarily take time out of the career. There's also cultural expectations that the women will take the lion's share of the child raising and also look after their elderly parents and in-laws. There's another deterrent as to why they may not want to have children. And the increasing cost of living in Singapore, there's a host of reasons as to why they're not going for it.
We went to South Korea earlier this year with the programme, and this rings so true. A lot of the women I met, young women, they said, they'd spent so much time on their education that they weren't prepared to give up the career that they had been trained for, they feel, since they were like tiny kids. Singapore has some of the best schools in the world.
That's right. And South Korea and Singapore actually have the equal total fertility rate, which is the way it's measured. It's, there's 1.1, 1.2 kids. So they're also the lowest, and Taiwan. It's a real issue amongst these East Asian cultures where they have high levels of education. They put a lot of effort into it. And the demographer I also spoke with said that getting ahead as a woman is more difficult there. There's sort of a chauvinism perhaps in the workplace. So they need to invest more in order to get the same rewards. And there's also the cultural expectation about how much investment a kid needs. If you need to be investing in your child succeeding in mathematics, in violin, in basketball, then really one child is a lot of investment and a lot of time away from that workplace that you've spent a long time investing in your education into.
Katie Silver, thanks very much. Back from Singapore, here in London, in this newsroom for